Amazing. Hi, everyone. I can't see everyone, but I'm assuming there's a good amount of people there. So thank you so much for coming to the info session to learn more about Boren. My name is Hannah. I am on the outreach team here at Boren, so I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. So what are the Boren Awards? I don't know how many people in the room have heard about it, but I'm assuming not many. Boren is not always the most well-known scholarship, but I'm hoping that this information session is super helpful and answers any questions you have. So what is Boren? So Boren was started in 1991 by the National Security Education Act, established by Senator David Boren from Oklahoma. So Senator Boren realized that there was a gap in the federal government and that there was a need for people who had international experience and culture and critical language skills. So, how do you fix that gap? You offer scholarships to students like yourselves to go overseas, get that international experience, immerse yourself in the culture, and most importantly, gain those critical language skills that you wouldn't otherwise get in America, and then come back and use those skills in the federal government. So, that is going to come up a lot throughout the presentation, or is that the main three themes are language, national security, and public service. So that is going to be recurring basically through everything. So just kind of keeping those in mind throughout the presentation, thinking about Boren, those three are the main components of what Boren is. So what it looks like for you is generous study abroad funding, including some fully funded programs aimed to get you overseas learning these less commonly taught languages that are critical to U.S. national security. It is for undergraduate and graduate students committed to studying critical languages overseas and dedicated to public service. So, if you're undergraduate or a graduate student, you are eligible. It's for basically anyone that is seeking a degree. If you're an undergraduate student who's looking at graduating soon, you can do this in grad school as well. So, it is basically an option the entire time that you're a student. Now, what makes Boren a little bit unique is that there is a service requirement attached to it. So, all Boren awardees are agreeing to work in the federal government and national security roles for at least 1 year after graduation. So, this is pretty unique in that Boren is kind of a two-part program. It is study abroad funding while you're overseas as a student, and then afterwards, it is a pipeline to a career in public service. So it is kind of twofold in that sense. Again, bringing in the language piece as well as the national security and public service aspect of it. So some basic eligibility requirements. So all students who are doing Boren should be planning to study a foreign language intensively in an eligible world region. So what makes Boren a little bit unique as well is that Boren does not fund studies to Western Europe, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. So I know a lot of students are interested in Western Europe, but thinking kind of outside the box there, basically the entire rest of the world is up for grabs. So think Central Eastern Europe, Asia, Africa, the Middle East, Latin America, all of the countries in those regions. All Boren awardees should be committed to public service and national security. Like I said, those themes are going to come up a lot. They're going to be a core part of your application and a core part of what Boren is. So you want to make sure that public service and national security is something that resonates with you. You do need to be matriculated at an accredited U.S. institution. You are all students right now, which means you are eligible. Like I said, if you're a graduating senior, something you may consider doing is potentially delaying your graduation date and spending your last year overseas or applying during grad school. So we do have a fair amount of kind of graduating seniors who end up taking their last year. So they finish all of their degree requirements. They just get their school to sign off to keep them enrolled, but they spend their last year essentially overseas. And then US citizenship and non-citizen of overseas destination. So if any of you are dual citizens, that's absolutely okay. You just can't go to the country that you have dual citizenship in. So if you are a dual citizen between Poland and the US, totally fine. You just wouldn't be able to do your Boren Award to Poland. So just something to keep in mind. Up in the top right QR code, up in the top right corner of a lot of these slides is a QR code. For the most part, it usually just goes to our website to expand on what the slide is about. So if you need more information on anything, you can always scan the QR code. I'll point out the couple that I think are relevant or that I think are interesting, but just know that's up there if you want to get more information on what the slide is about. So going into the overseas destination preferences. So like I said, Boren does not fund studies to Western Europe, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand. So all of those countries are grayed out because they are ineligible. This map is kind of confusing. There are a lot of colors going on. So essentially, the green countries mean that it is preferred and good to go. So we want you to go there. You should be able to, with the exception of China. Boren has not sent students to China for a couple years. So students studying Mandarin are going to Taiwan instead. So just something to keep in mind there if you are interested in Chinese. The blue countries are countries that are preferred and that we would like to send you there, but for some safety and security reasons, we don't anticipate being able to actually do so. So if you are interested in a blue country, you do need to select a viable green one as a backup option. That being said, all students applying to study Arabic, Mandarin, or Russian do need to have a viable backup country. So no matter what you're doing, you do need to make sure that you are listing a viable backup program. That way you can go to that and actually do your Boren. Language preferences. So this is a very, very long list of languages. Boren is all about the languages. These are just split up by regions. A couple things to note about the languages are that French is only a preferred language through our African flagship language program. I'll go a bit more into that later on, but just know that it is only preferred through our African program, which is in Senegal, and it's a very structured program, and there's a proficiency requirement for that. For everything else on this list, there is no proficiency requirement. So even though this is a language award, you don't need to know the language beforehand. The whole point of Boren is recognizing that these languages aren't commonly taught in the US, so Boren might be your first experience and opportunity to learn these languages. So don't feel intimidated by the fact that it is a language award because again, there's no minimums and there's no maximums. So you could be a complete beginner who's just interested in learning it. You could be a heritage speaker who's been speaking it their entire life, anywhere in between. There are no minimums or maximums when it comes to knowing the language. So a note about Spanish. You might have noticed that Spanish is not on that list of languages. So Spanish is not a preferred language. There are a ton of Spanish speakers in the US, as I'm sure you all know. So it's not deemed a critical language, but you can still apply to it. It's just not preferred. But Spanish also has a language proficiency requirement. So here you will need to know the language. Spanish is an intermediate high. It used to be advanced, but now it's being lowered to an intermediate high. If you're going to study Spanish, you should also apply to study it in a preferred destination. So basically, Spanish is something that if you have a lot of experience in and you really, really feel like you can make a good case for Spanish of why it's important to national security, you can apply. We wouldn't usually recommend it. We'd usually try suggesting a preferred language. So, like Portuguese, a lot of Spanish speakers with a Spanish background find it pretty easy to switch to Portuguese and learn the language pretty quickly from that. So, that's an opportunity to get a third language, do a preferred language. If you are very, very set on Spanish, you absolutely can apply, but just know that we usually only award one or two Spanish awards a year. So, you do have a better chance of applying for a preferred language. Field of study preferences. So this is a list of majors. So we don't have any specific major. This is not only an award for languages majors or international relations majors. This is a very comprehensive list of different fields of study. If yours isn't on there verbatim, don't worry, you'll just pick the one that's closest to it. When you're looking at this, the only difference is that the majors in green on the left are what we consider to be STEM majors, which means that you can go for a shorter period of time, whereas the majors in white on the right, those are not what we consider STEM majors. A quick note, if any of you are ROTC or veterans, is that we highly encourage you to apply. ROTC and veterans have a very, very high award rate because ROTC cadets are going to fulfill their service requirement through commissioning, and veterans have already demonstrated their commitment to national security and public service. So if this applies to you, we definitely recommend that you apply. So going into the award amounts, I'm sure this is why most of you are here. This is ultimately a scholarship. So the Boren scholarships are for undergraduate students, whereas the fellowships are for graduate students. So that is the only difference when you're looking at them. Basically, everything is virtually the same, but that is the only difference is one is for undergraduate and one is for graduate students. I'm assuming that most of you are undergraduates. So for Boren scholarships, For both awards, the award is a completely flat rate award that is fully dependent on how long you are overseas for. So if you are overseas from anywhere between 6 to 12 months, you'll receive the full amount of $25,000. So 6 to 12 months is the preferred length of time. That is what we would like you to do. Since this is a language-focused award, obviously the longer that you're overseas, the better you'll get at the language and the more you'll pick up. So we're really looking for students who are going to overseas for 6 to 12 months. That being said, there's reasons why not everyone can do that. So for a semester, 3 to 6 months, you would receive $12,500. And for non-STEM majors, that is the absolute minimum of going for 3 months. Now, for STEM majors, so those majors that are back in green that we consider to be STEM, we know it's usually pretty hard for STEM majors to go overseas during the school year because of the classes they're taking. So you can go short term in the summer. So undergraduate STEM students can go for 8 to 11 weeks in the summer and receive $8,000. For graduate students, it's essentially the same of either the semester or the whole year. The only difference is that graduate students can also add on a domestic summer study and receive $5,000 for that as well, but it's completely optional. So what does that cover? So you can use your Boren funds to pay for a round trip plane ticket to your overseas destination, program tuition and materials, of course, overseas medical insurance, lodging and food costs for the time that you're in country, local transportation, visa fees, and visa related travel if you need to leave the country to renew your visa, cybersecurity costs. There are a couple things that you cannot use your Boren funds to pay for. So that includes passport expenses, vaccinations, dependents if you have any, personal travel or entertainment, or other things that are not related to Boren. So for the most part, most things that are involved with the cost of studying abroad, you can use your Boren funds to pay for. Some things like, your Netflix subscription, or if you're going on a fun trip with your friends, you can't use your Boren funds to pay for that. But for the most part, for basically everything else, you can use your Boren funds for. So going into the two types of eligible programs, there are self-identified programs and there are regional flagship language initiatives. So the self-identified programs is what the vast majority of Borns are going to be doing. So in this setup, you are picking your own program and Born is really just the funding instrument for it. So this means that you can pick a program through your school's study abroad office. You could enroll directly at an overseas university of your choice. You can go through like a third-party provider like CIEE or those big study abroad companies. We have a list on our website of recent language programs that Borns have done. So we don't endorse any specific programs. We don't have any pre-selected for you. This is just a really good kickstarting point to see what people have done in the past. For example, if you are interested in studying in Japan, but you have no idea where to start, there's a lot of schools in Japan that people have gone to, so you can look and see what people have done and start your research there. Despite the fact that you can basically do whatever program you want because you're in charge of it, there are a couple constants. So the constant is that no matter what, everyone needs to be doing 15 to 20 hours of language study per week. So this is, again, a language award. It is not just for any study abroad. It is study abroad to learn the language. So you want to make sure that you're picking a program that is intensive and is looking at 15 to 20 contact hours with the language per week. Both undergraduate and graduate students can also choose to do internships overseas if that interests you as well. You can do an unpaid internship, and graduate students can also do research while they're overseas as well. So the flagship language initiatives are more structured programs. So for the self-identified program, that's essentially you finding whatever program you want, and Boren's really just funding it. Flagship language initiatives are these are a specific set of programs that you are choosing to do. So this is your study abroad program. This Boren has a more of a role in administering. They are for a select number of languages for African and Southeast Asian languages. A couple of things to note about these programs is that they are available to all levels. They are very small cohort-based study abroad programs. So these consist of a domestic summer at a U.S. university and then an overseas fall semester in the country that you'd be studying in. So this program is super structured. It's set up for you. So you are committing to the summer and the fall. And then if you want to extend into the spring, you absolutely can. You would just shift into your self-identified program and pick your own program. But the summer and fall is set up for you. Something to know about these are that these are fully funded. So, like I said, the Boren amounts, sometimes if students are picking a very expensive program, sometimes the $25,000 isn't enough for that. So they'll have to look for outside funding. The flagship language initiative programs are completely fully funded. The Boren amount will cover the funds of the program. These are also credit bearing as well. So the first one is the African Flagship Languages Initiative. So if you're interested in studying French, Swahili, Akantri, Wolof, or Zulu, these are options for you. So if you are picking one of these languages and doing this program, you are committing to spending your summer at the University of Florida before going overseas to your respective country. Something to note again is that French does have an proficiency requirement of intermediate high or higher. So if you do have French experience, this is absolutely a really good program for you, but it's not for beginner French speakers. Everything else, though, you can be a complete beginner at. Again, summer and fall is set up for you. If you want to extend into the spring, you totally can as well. So, the Southeast Asian Flagship Languages Initiative, students here are spending their summer at the University of Wisconsin-Madison before going overseas in the fall to either Indonesia, Thailand, or Vietnam to learn Indonesian, Thai, or Vietnamese. So, these programs are really, really excellent. They will get you from a beginner to basically advanced. One of my favorite little anecdotes is that last year I was at Florida State University. One of the students there, she was in the Indonesia program, the Indonesia flagship program. She was a double major in both French and Arabic, so had been taking French her entire life, had been taking Arabic all throughout college, enough to double major in them, so very intensive programs. She started the Indonesia flagship program as a complete beginner, and by the end of it, she said that she was better at Indonesian than she was at both French and Arabic. So just the 6 months or so of the flagship program outweighed years of learning it at home and majoring in it. So these programs really, really are excellent. They are very intensive. You're looking at about 60 to 75 hours of contact hours with the language because you're in classes, you have a language pledge, you're doing conversation partners and cultural activities. But if you are interested in these languages, they are really, really excellent. So going into application elements, so there are two main essays in the application. I'll go into that on the next slide. Letters of recommendation. If you are an undergraduate student, you will need two letters of recommendation. You can include an optional third if you would like. Graduate students will need three letters of recommendation. If you happen to have experience in the language already, so say you're taking Japanese at school, you can also have your professor submit a language proficiency evaluation. So it doesn't hurt you if you don't have it. Again, you can be a total beginner. Not everyone is going to have experience in the language. But if you are taking the language, it obviously doesn't hurt to not have a professor also talk about your skills and talk about where you're at with the language and your ability to learn it. Transcripts just need unofficial transcripts, so pretty basic, pretty easy to get. The study plan summary. So the study plan summary is what I consider to be a pretty short but mighty piece of the application. So this is about 250 word space for you to essentially describe to the reviewers what it is you're doing. So like I said, for the self-identified programs, we are not a program provider, we're the funding for it. So we don't know what program you're doing. This is the opportunity to tell the reviewer exactly what program you'll be doing overseas. So this is when you want to really flesh out what exactly you'll be doing. For example, you can say something like, I will be studying at Yonsei University's Korean Language Institute in Seoul. I will be taking Korean classes for 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'll be living with a homestay family, and I will have a conversation partner that I talk to for an hour every day. So really fleshing out and getting into the details of what exactly you're going to be doing to study the language while you're overseas and all the ways that you plan to immerse yourself and what your program consists of. So for those essay requirements, these are not the longest essays in the world. They're about 800 words each. So that first essay is going to be a national security argument, whereas the second essay is going to be a little bit more of a personal essay talking about why you want to study abroad and talking about your future career plans and what you want to do to fulfill your career in public service. So for that first national security essay, you are going to be asked to argue the relevance of your overseas destination, the language you're studying, and or your field of security to U.S. national security. So for this essay, you really want to get specific with it. So your argument and essay should be talking about the country that you are applying to study in. I know it can get easy to talk about a regional conflict, or sometimes, for example, if you want to talk about China because you wanted to go to China, but you're really going to be studying in Taiwan, you still want to make sure that your essay is talking about Taiwan because it should ultimately be about what does your country specifically have to bring? Why is your experience in that country important? Also talking about your language and or your field of study. So national security, I know, is not something that's on everyone's mind all the time. So when you're thinking about it, don't feel like you have to make an argument that's completely out of your wheelhouse. We usually recommend like thinking about what you're majoring in, what you're studying, and trying to find a connection that way. So you can think about it in terms of what you're studying. So if you're a computer science major, maybe you talk about a cybersecurity issue between the two countries. If you're a public health major, maybe you're talking about a health crisis that's happening over there. So kind of tailoring it to what you're interested in and what your career field is, kind of linking this all into one cohesive narrative line of this is what I'm studying, this is why I want to go overseas, how it's going to help me get to the career that I want in the federal government. Something to keep in mind is that the priority organizations for service are departments of defense, state, and homeland security, as well as the intelligence community. I'm going to get more into that when we talk about public service, but looking at this can also help guide your national security essays by looking at the agency's website, seeing what their missions are, seeing what they're talking about in terms of the country that you're studying to see what the hot topic issues are and where the points of concern are for the US. Language and culture. So again, Boren is a language program that is the forefront of it. So your program you're applying to should have language at its forefront. So what that looks like is we want you to be picking programs that are going to maximize the opportunities for language immersion while you're overseas. So looking at a minimum of 15 to 20 contact hours with the language per week. So again, like I said, that can consist of classroom study, it can consist of private tutoring, it can consist of conversation partners and cultural activities that are done in the target language, doing an internship in the target language. There's lots of different options there. Sorry, someone's calling. Um, Setting realistic expectations for proficiency gains. So this, I think, goes in handy with creating your program. So when you're designing your program, you want to think about where you're at. So if you're a beginner, you should probably be focused on those traditional face-to-face classes to get the basics of the language down. If you're an advanced speaker, if you're a heritage speaker, sometimes we have heritage speakers who can listen to it and can speak it, but they can't read it or write it. So sometimes they'll hire a private tutor specifically to help them fill that gap and work on those specific points in the language, or they'll take classes that are specifically for heritage speakers, really tailoring the program to what is going to best serve you and get you the most out of that as well. This QR code is helpful. Again, it goes to the list of recent language programs that Borens have done in the past. So this is, again, super helpful if you don't really know where to start, but you know you want to go to a specific place. Public service. So again, this is going to be a core component of Boren because Boren Awards alumni are committing to working for the federal government for at least 1 year after graduation. And the preference is for applicants who are demonstrating long-term commitment to government careers. So this program is intended to kind of be a pipeline to public service and really looking for people who are willing and passionate about dedicating themselves to the public good. That being said, don't think that the service requirement is going to derail any plans that you have. If you're an undergraduate student who is like, I was going to go to law school right after this, I was going to go do my master's right after this, you absolutely can. There are educational deferments available. So if you are a senior and you are planning to go get your master's after that, you can kind of just delay that service requirement to not go into effect until after you graduate from your later degree. So this is also not something that you have to do immediately following graduation. Undergraduate students have 3 years after they graduate to start that service requirement. So it doesn't need to be finished within then, you just do need to start that. Graduate students have 2 years. So you do have some time after you graduate to do that job search and get that job and fulfill the service. On our website, we also have a list of where over 5,000 Boren recipients have fulfilled service. So this can also be super interesting to see where people are going. Department of State and Department of Defense are by far the largest agencies that people have fulfilled service in. So talking about fulfilling service, Board does not place you in any specific position. So you do have the freedom to search for the roles that you want, pursue the careers that you want. We do, however, have ways of counting service, and that is how we look at the agencies. So we have tier one agencies, and these are our priority agencies. These are priority because they have direct ties to national security. So these are the Department of Defense, Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, and the intelligence community. So again, Boren was founded out of the goal of increasing people in national security roles with these language experiences, which is why the goal is to get you into these top tier agencies. Underneath each agency seal are examples of positions that Borens have done to fulfill their service requirement. So there is a large breadth of options out there. No matter what position you're doing, any position working for these agencies will fulfill your service requirement. Additionally, contract work at these agencies can also fulfill your service requirement. So myself, I'm doing outreach. I work for the Institute of International Education, which is a nonprofit. But because I work on the Boren Awards program, which is Department of Defense funded, makes me a DoD contractor, which means that my position would actually fulfill the service requirement. So there's a lot of ways to look at that, especially when you think about big contractors like Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and other contractors like that. Of course, service in the armed forces will also fulfill the service requirement. So there's a lot of linguist positions available. So this is definitely an option as well. That being said, you're probably like, what about the rest of the federal government? The rest of the federal government is still there. We just consider those to be tier two agencies. So this means that not every position is going to automatically count. It means that when you get a position, if and when you get a position at one of these agencies, you will submit an argument basically explaining why it's relevant to national security, why your position is a national security role. And then it will be approved on a case by case basis. So again, these positions here are all examples of positions that Borans have used to fulfill their service in the past. If you're interested in economics and international trade, the International Trade Administration within the Department of Commerce absolutely loves to hire Borans. There's a ton of Boren awardees in their office, so that's a really, really popular one. Like I said, Boren does not place you in any specific job, so it is ultimately up to you to look for the jobs you want and land that. But there is a lot of job search support and resources there for you. So once you return from being overseas, you are connected to the NSEP service team. So there are federal colleagues on the DoD side, and their whole jobs are essentially to help you fulfill your service. How they do that is through resume consulting and offering you a lot of opportunities that aren't available to everyone. So this QR code goes to NSEP.net. This is a website that Boren awardees have full access to once they've returned from overseas. This is where they'll track what jobs they've applied to, what jobs they've done to fulfill their service. And a great part about it is that there's a job board on there that has exclusive and featured job opportunities. So this means that some of the jobs that are posted here are not posted on USA Jobs, so the competition pool is a lot less. Additionally, Boren awardees receive two special hiring authorities. So these hiring authorities make it a lot easier to streamline that hiring process and make it easier for you to get hired faster. So this is a really, really special tool that Boren awardees are very grateful for, and Scythe has helped them land their jobs. Additionally, every year we have our federal employment seminar. So this is an annual event that we host every year in the fall. This year it will be in November. It is for all recently returned awardees to come to DC and learn about the service requirement. So here during this event, they will learn about the service requirement, how to fulfill that, how to use their hiring authorities, learn about security clearances, hear from agency reps, and have a federal job information fair. So this is a closed event only open to Boren awardees. So again, a really, really unique opportunity to learn about service and kind of get that leg up in your job search. This event is at no cost to Boren awardees. So we will fly you out to DC. We'll put you up in a hotel. It's at no cost to you and just an event to help you kickstart your job search. Additionally, there's a huge alumni network. That again, there are thousands of Boren alumni who have fulfilled service, who have studied abroad, been through similar situations. So again, a large alumni network for you to connect with. It's going into the application timeline. So the applications are open now, so you can look at that. Again, the application instructions are on our website. Everything there is verbatim. You can find the essay prompts there. There are no surprises on the application. Working with your campus reps. So all of your people on campus are really great resources. Your professors, the study abroad office, your campus reps. They are really key on helping you write your essays and craft your application. You can always talk to me and my team. We're here to help, but we can't get down in the weeds with you with your essay. So that's really where your on-campus support is going to come in handy. Want to make sure that you submit your applications by the deadline, of course. We don't accept late applications. So the application deadline is going to be in January, and then you will be notified about your status in mid to late April. If you are a recipient of the Boren Awards, you will then come to DC that first week of June for a mandatory pre-departure orientation. So this pre-departure orientation is mandatory. You'll receive security briefings, you'll hear about Boren policy, meet your Boren advisors, learn about the surface requirement, meet each other. So it's a really great event. It is mandatory, but it is no cost to you again. So it won't come out of your award amount. We'll fly you out to DC, put you up in the hotel for those 2 days. It's a really good event to meet everyone and learn more. And then anytime after that pre-departure orientation, you are free to go overseas. So again, getting more into that timeline piece of it, these are the application deadlines. So for graduate students, that application deadline is January 21st, 2026. And for undergraduate scholars, your deadline is 1 week later at January 28th. So keeping in mind this timeline, this application period is if you are looking to start your study abroad anytime after June 5th, 2026 and before March 1st, 2027. So anytime between that, you just need to leave to study abroad. You can leave February 2027 and be gone for the next year. That's totally fine. That's just a time frame that you need to start your study abroad. So if you are looking at studying fall of 2027 and you're really ahead of the curve, that's awesome. If you're interested in applying for a Boren, you'll just wait until next year's application cycle. So just keeping in mind that timeline to make sure that you are aligning when you're going to go overseas. And then, like I said, again, if you are going to apply, you do want to block out your calendars for that first week of June. I believe it's going to be June 2nd to 3rd this in 2026 for that mandatory pre-departure orientation. You do need to attend this in order to keep your Boren, so just want to make sure that you can apply. It will be all over the application as well as a reminder to block out your calendars. So that wraps up the presentation. This has a lot of information, but overall takeaways, this is our contact information. You can reach out to us with any questions. I'm on a team of 3. We're here. You can email us, you can call us, you can set up a 15-minute Zoom session with us. We are very, very accessible to you, very much here to answer any questions that you have. I hope this was helpful. I know that this is a ton of information packed into one PowerPoint. So it takes a while to kind of sort through it all, but I am here to answer any questions that you have right off the bat.
So we do have a few questions here in the audience, if you are ready.
Yes, amazing.
Hi, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. If you could speak up a little bit, that'd probably be better.
No, of course. Good afternoon. So my questions are really family based, and then also my current job. So I currently work for the DoD, technically. Does Borden have any, like, you know how when certain like service members, like in the reserves, get activated, their job is protected for like a whole 2 years or whatever?
Mhm.
Would that be the case with the Borden Awards? Or would I
So
have to quit my job if I want to do the year?
yeah, so for Boren, you do need to be fully disaffiliated with the government. You're not allowed to keep your job. So ROTC and military affiliated people that are going on their Borens have to be in non-active, non-drilling status. So you need to be like completely disaffiliated. If you currently work for the DoD, we are going to require that you have a letter from your employer stating that you no longer work for them and that you are completely separated from them while you're overseas.
Would that count if it's DHA and not DOD?
Anything that's government. So it doesn't any sort of government job, any federal government related thing, you need a letter of separation.
Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm sorry. So, Ms. Hannah, could you go over a little bit more in detail what the $25,000 can be used for? I want to make sure the students understand that that money is used for them to live off of while they are overseas. It's not you're going to get paid that, you know, plus y'all are going to support them living there.
Yes, absolutely. So can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So this slide goes over all of the eligible expenses. So Boren, it's supposed to be a scholarship for you to study abroad. So you can use it to get overseas. So your plane ticket, depending on where you're going, could be pretty expensive. Of course, program tuition and materials. And like you said, it is for living expenses as well. So your medical insurance, your housing, the food overseas, transportation, basically all of the costs that it takes to live overseas, you can use your Boren funds for.
So this is pretty much y'all are funding the opportunity for somebody to broaden their horizon,
Mhm.
visit another country, learn a language, and be able to apply that language to the degree of study that they are a part of in general.
Precisely. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a scholarship for you to study abroad, get that language experience, and then once you come back, kickstart your career in public service.
Okay, we have another question in the audience.
Okay, well, you spoke of, hello, you hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. You spoke of how some of the finance, depending on the location, may eventually come out of pocket because of the location or the choice of study may be a little bit more expensive.
Mhm.
So I'm assuming maybe that's more Western countries per se? Or is
Yes.
it like example, my interest is Brazil, right?
Mhm.
So if and I don't know if you guys consider Brazil to be a Western country. So, like how did you guys accumulate the idea that, okay, this is too expensive? Is it like, would it be like Hong Kong or is it, you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, definitely. So Boren is just flat rate in that we don't really take into consideration what each country is. If you are going somewhere that is expensive, like Taiwan or a lot of East Asian countries like Japan, Korea, those can be a little bit more expensive. You can absolutely get outside funding. So if the Boren is not providing enough money to cover for all of the expenses, you can absolutely apply for other scholarships, like any school scholarships that you have, any outside scholarships, outside funding. You can absolutely get that and stack that on. For countries like Brazil, Brazil is pretty cheap, so it should be able to take you pretty far. There's definitely, I mean, some disparity in that depending on where you go. Some countries are a lot cheaper to live off of than others. So that is something to take in mind when you're looking at what countries you're applying to and making sure that you are budgeting appropriately. And if you don't feel like Bourne is going to be enough to cover everything, looking for that outside funding.
Thank you, that was pretty good.
25,000 ain't gonna get you very far in Hawaii.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then I have another question. So would I be able to take my family with me?
Yeah, so Boren, from a Boren perspective, we don't necessarily care, but you just can't use your Boren funds to like pay for your kids' toys and things like that. So from a Boren perspective, we care about you and we're sending you abroad. If you choose to take your family with you, that's definitely like your prerogative and you can do so. But from a Boren perspective, Boren will only be caring about you and checking in with you about things.
And then for the lodging, do you guys help find us lodging?
So we don't because every student is doing their own program. This is a lot of you are crafting your overseas experience, and Boren is really just giving you the money to do that. So you do have a Boren advisor who's there to check in with you, make sure that you're safe and that things are going well. But we don't advise on visa stuff because that people are going all over the place or housing and things like that. So it is up to you to find a program and find different housing and things.
No pause.
Any other questions? Ms. Mora, do you have any questions or does your group have any questions where you are? No, ma'am, they do not. Okay. Uh, Thank you, Ms. Hannah, for coming. Again, we will be posting this on our YouTube channel for anyone that wants to follow up or use the QR codes that were attached to the individual slides. so that you can do a little bit more research. I do highly recommend that everyone takes Miss Hannah up on contacting them directly if they have any questions or need any help with any of the processes and steps. Miss Hannah, do you know if there will be any sessions of Boren awardees talking about their experience coming up?
We are hoping to, so we do have a group of alumni ambassadors. Unfortunately, Bourne has had to take a bit of a social media pause with things going on. So we are hoping to, though. We are hoping to have some alumni sessions. We're hoping to be able to post some like essay webinars and tips and hosting webinars for students to join. So if and when that happens, we'll send that out through the newsletter.
Great. Yes, we're very interested if y'all had any past Bourne awardees that could talk about the experience of preparing for their trip. Answer some of those questions like how did you find accommodations? Did you ever have to change accommodations midway? Things like that.
Definitely, yeah. I can say that for sure. Foreign awardees who do receive the award when they come for that pre-departure orientation, we do have alumni at that orientation. So they're split up into regional alumni panels to talk about that and get more in depth about their experiences there, as well as their job seeking experiences. So we do have a lot of alumni connections at that orientation, but I completely understand that it's very helpful to have when you're applying and a little bit earlier. So we are very much hoping to have alumni ambassadors more involved in our outreach and hopefully having some webinars with them to talk about their experiences.
Thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting me. I really appreciate it. Those were all great questions.
Yes, ma'am. You have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. You as well. Bye-bye.